Hey everyone, thanks for joining our Tech Talk. Today we're going to dive into the trenches and go high level as we talk about AI managing complex code sets and the Salesforce ecosystem. Today we have both Arto and Yari, and I'm going to give them a moment to introduce themselves. Arto, welcome.
Thank you. So my name is Arto Lehtonen. I'm working in the public group IT department as a Salesforce manager, leading a Salesforce team, supporting right now multiple Salesforce instances. I've been around in Salesforce almost 16 years now. So yeah, that's starts to be a little bit long time.
A lot of badges on your trail there.
No, I am really bad to complete those badges. I have studied a lot, but normally when I go to trailheads, I'll just search for something specific thing, and when I found it, I'll basically end.
Good to know. Good to know. And let me just introduce Yari, and then we need to come back to how you learn new things for Salesforce. And Yari.
Hi, Allison. Hi, Arto. My name is Yari Salama. I'm the CEO of Valo AI, based here in San Francisco. And Valo is a new AI admin service solution for Salesforce customers in the Salesforce ecosystem. But I also actually worked at Salesforce in the platform product management team and behind a lot of different Salesforce products like the security health check and Salesforce Shield, big objects, and a few others. So I'm really excited to talk about the ecosystem. I think my journey began 2013. So it's been 12 years.
Nice, nice. And the purpose of our webinar today is for folks to learn from folks who are veterans and what's on the cutting edge and new and coming out. And so we're going to go through a set of discussions, and we hope that when you listen to this webinar, you give us feedback. Either drop it in the bottom of the webinar, or please feel free to email us via LinkedIn with direct message and DMs. So myself, I'm an independent consultant in the tech space from a cybersecurity background. I also have an AI startup. So let's get into some of the Salesforce specifics, and let's start with Arto. But of course, Yari, you're welcome to jump in. We want to really tee up some of the core struggles today because it changes. But if you think about today, your work in the Salesforce environment, what are the biggest struggles, Arto, that you're facing?
Personally, I would go. It really comes on how when you have a Salesforce instance that has been around for a long time, there has been multiple different administrators, there have been multiple different companies implementing something there. So, and in worst case, you have merged different companies in one Salesforce instance. The end result is that you have complex user setup where you have different permissions and nobody really knows how things work. And when you try to find something or try to figure out like certain permissions, sometimes it can take a long time. Really, you are making queries on a workbench, playing in Excel and try to do the matching and so on. That's of course, like you could say that, oh yeah, you just go and clean up your Salesforce org, but practice, like nobody has time for that.
You said, I think, the magic words we can spend some time on. Nobody knows how it works. And I've been on both sides of that as a business owner, where I'm just trying to accomplish something and I'm talking to the admin to say, look, I just want to make sure the leads show up in Salesforce, right? And I've been on the flip side where it's like, okay, we have all of that and 3 people have left, right? We've had a consultant come in and try to work it. We've had our admin leave because he's overworked. So yeah, that I think the key of nobody knows how it works sounds like it's really a big struggle, especially in long-time Salesforce environments. Yari, do you see things differently?
I think, Arthur, you brought a great point in terms of the historical view, being in the ecosystem for a long time, and also kind of like being an administrator in a volunteer kind of situations, but never really experienced the admin job like as a full-time paid admin or an architect in an organization. But I definitely have felt the pain and, building and kind of constructing solutions inside Salesforce and now as an ISV. But I would maybe like double click on the overall kind of complexity that like Salesforce itself is complex. like, like when you think about 3 releases a year, every 4 months, there's something new. So over these like 20 plus years, the company has really like built this incredible supermarket of software capabilities and functionalities. No one can really know everything and how it works and how to configure it. And now that especially if you multiply the fact that you're in an organization where you have multiple people working on it, to kind of being able to stay in the know what's the left hand is doing, what the right hand is doing, and also then the time. So I would say that probably late 90s, early 2000s, Salesforce was like simple to configure, simple to build with, and you could probably find the buttons and things could be done quite easily. I don't think that's the case anymore. I think it's a very advanced application that requires expert people to know what they're doing, which is also, I think, an opportunity here in terms of these new AI solutions and automations to simplify again and create like this advanced tier back to maybe more of a basic tier or beginner tier in terms of trying to make things more simpler for customers. Because ultimately, I think what majority of customers want are relatively simple outcomes. They want to do lead mapping and lead management. They want, really smooth, efficient opportunity management process. They want a, customer support and case and tasks to be efficient, and just the way that like you're customizing and creating things, like it's like every little thing starts to be a lot of work. So that's kind of like my kind of, I think, what I would raise to the top. But like being a big ecosystem, like, there's a lot of complexity to layered onion. It has multiple layers, but I was thought with the overall kind of like, this is a big onion that has hundreds of layers.
Right. And so on the one hand, massive levels of complexity, and on the other, a business just trying to move forward as fast as possible and drive those leads forward as fast as possible. So you feel like you have some tension. But
and I would add on that one is that like it's a little bit on I would almost say Salesforce fault, because they have these, they are really good on marketing, and they are really good saying that, hey, it's easy to configure something and so on. And there used to be what it was like click no code and really easy to implement Salesforce, and it is, but only until a certain level. And trying to get that like when you start really customizing, like Jari said, like you can customize Salesforce a lot. You can do nowadays almost anything with that one, but do you really want to do that one? And then you need to maintain. That's where the problems come.
And this is where one of the things we want to talk about today is how much can we leverage AI, and to what extent, and what do we mean by AI? So I think the first part, Jari, I'm going to tee up to you, is AI in Salesforce has a lot of meanings and connotations, from agents to other interpretations. Can you just cast a little bit of a definition of how you see AI in the Salesforce ecosystem?
So I was in the company when Salesforce went on a kind of an AI acquisition spree and started building the Einstein platform and, Einstein kind of co-pilot and a lot of the AI automations to be able then to help a salesperson to detect which leads to work with and or for identifying the most applicable knowledge article to be able to support to closing a case and a lot of those kinds of automations. I would say that like now Salesforce has really pushed forward the Agentforce platform, where agents are now kind of taking actions, and there's like a trigger component, almost like a flow in a way that there's a certain discovery of certain things and then a consequence. And a lot of the Agentforce is focused on the end user. And I think a lot of the agent actions are great for sales managers or sales teams, doing core CRM actions. I think where now Valo and my company and our team and product is focused on is a lot around the administrator and the builder, the person kind of behind the screen working to create Agentforce flows, triggers, managing access controls, who should see what, and what kind of a layout we're putting in front of a person, and what type of licenses they are required, what kind of like other tools, manage packages, other app exchange tools should be involved in the overall experience. And I think a big difference with Salesforce AI and Valo AI is that Salesforce is focused a lot on the end user actions. Valo is in the admin actions. And then we're seeing this whole kind of a wave of AI across all of these, like whether it's CI/CD, DevOps pipelines, to code scanning, Apex creation for developers. And it's really, really exciting time in Salesforce, but also I would say in any cloud platform at the moment.
Love it. And that's where we are now, where we see AI, and then Arto, you're living it day to day. So what have you trialed or experimented with, and where do you see AI in the real world day to day?
I have been playing around with AI and in Salesforce, but not in a way that like we haven't implemented anything yet. But like how I see is that like, yes, like Jari said, like Salesforce Agentforce is really focused on the end users, and I see that there is a multiple use cases that will definitely be there. Like if it's a support agent supporting like a customer, really they are able to close the case faster because they are able to get the knowledge articles faster, or basically already get the ready-made response for the end users, which is great. But then also like when it comes on sales, like just the use case that they are able to, instead running a report, they can basically ask that, hey, okay, my opportunities, where I am, and AI is able to pull that information to you. So it's one of those things that I didn't even realize like earlier, but I learned that you don't really need to build reports necessarily anymore for the sales, because they are able to just use the AI to pull the information that they are looking for, which is kind of neat.
Yes.
And then of course, like Jari mentioned, like there is already coming like even Salesforce is, I think it's coming already on the sprint release. There is coming Apex coding, and there is coming Agentforce flow builders and so on. So yeah, it will be interesting to see where we are at the end of the year.
Yeah, and you're hitting on something that I'm hearing, being involved in a lot of AI projects, where it's one thing to find something for you, it's another thing to just take care of it for you. Yep. So if you run me a report as a business owner, now I've got to analyze it, right? Okay, so I have to analyze it, and then I have to figure out what I'm going to do. So what you hear with the desire of what people want from AI solutions is what you described, which is, yeah, that's great. I don't need the report. Just do the action from the report for me.
Yep.
And Jari, I've heard that some of the Valo functionality does exactly that. So it kind of takes it beyond just discovery to, I guess it's right behind you, discover, observe, resolve.
That's right. I'll do it this way. Yes. So yeah, I think what really Valo is laser focused on is I would say, tabling time. I think one of the big problems, I think, for both administrators, architects, developers, as well as end users, power users, super users, is that you still need to, I think, analyze and spend a lot of time looking at a screen, looking at rows of information, and coming up to a particular decision outcome. And what I think AI is really powerful to really and helpful is to be able then to make recommendations and provide you key insights into the data that you're looking at on the screen, especially like, in a form of like asking specific questions from the AI that traditionally, let's say, logs and what users are doing can be hard to analyze. You need specific understanding of like what's good, what's not good. There might be some kind of a contextual information, whereas AI can learn all of that and realize that like now performance is poor, like we need or performance is doing really well. What is the specific number? Is this like 20, 50, 100, 150, 200, 1000? What is great? What is like mediocre? I think all of those guardrails, the human administrators can guide and handhold AI to basically then stay in the lookout for specific outcomes. And we've really learned from customers multitude of different use cases around different automations that can be powerful for them. But most importantly, I think the saving of the time, and time is being a very valuable commodity for busy, business people and people in the business ops in general. And especially if there's certain kinds of repetitive nature of the tasks that every week, every Friday, and it's Friday today. So we're looking into specific activities by end of the day or end of the quarter, end of the year. I think it's important then to realize that AI can be actually performing these much faster from the insights. And I recommend everybody to just give it a spin, and test out these AI tools in sandboxes and see yourself and if they provide any speed to the analysis.
Yeah, and Arto, I'm looking as the real user and thinking about what are the dreaded tasks that come up, and could we use those as a use case? So is it comparing user permissions, trying to offboard someone, or I'm a cybersecurity person, I am very concerned that we don't offboard, right? And the number of attacks that happen because someone's privileges were never.
Yeah, well, of course, I think like any big corporate nowadays, there is security policies, there is IT policies, and those are audited. So there is a certain things that you need to run reports in a Salesforce, and yes, that's always like trying to, for example, who has access on certain records. It's always like a task to figure out how exactly it would work, because Salesforce is great. It has profiles, it has a permission set, it has a permission set groups, and then of course all the sharing rules. And overall, if you need to go and figure it out, that can take time. And also another thing is with Salesforce Shield, you are able to see things that who is doing what. But again, it means that somebody has to go and look on those log files and understand what they mean. Mm. Those are big challenges always.
And that's where I see this shift that's kind of exciting to me, because we think of software in the past as somewhat passive. I go in, I have to do things, and then I have to pull and do. And what I feel like now is it's in a way, it's like autonomous software. It's going in, it's doing the monitoring for you, it's doing the cleaning for you. And I think of those maybe as agents, but I don't know, Jari, what your opinion on these kind of tedious tasks versus the future of how AI could help perform them in a different way than we've been used to from software in the past?
Yeah, I'd like to, maybe this is closing the circle, but Arto opened up with his comment around the technical complexity, especially if the environment's been around for a long time. It can be a very tedious task to just kind of debug how this is built. And like Arto mentioned, you have, permission sets, permission set groups, licenses, sharing rules, field level security. There's so many also exceptions to the rule in Salesforce that then if somebody puts a hard enough question, and especially if you're in an audit kind of scenario and you have to go through a compliance audit, that amount of manual checks ahead of you is high. And I think I think AI is kind of showing its superpowers is really the speed that you can get to a particular outcome, whereas before it was just a tedious task taking you days or even weeks. And now you can just do those in hours and I think still impress the boss and hey, look at this, and get to the stuff. But I'd be also actually very curious to hear from Arto that Salesforce is known to market. And last year it was, well, actually 2 years now in 25. 2 years ago, it was all about data cloud. Now it's agent force. There's always a new buzzword in Salesforce, and always kind of something new. And I'm kind of curious that what Arto is excited about. It's 2025. We're beginning of the year. If there is a buzzword in your mind that you're going to be, thinking about, or if there's 2 or 3 projects that you feel open to share with the audience that you're going to be in the lookout for this year?
Well, you are right. Salesforce is really good with the buzzwords. They always have this one great thing that they are marketing. Of course, there is also the caveat is that like they are really good with coming to market with the product that is not always exactly ready to market. So that's another caveat there. But I think for 2025, I would think that it will be really a year of AI and how that will be implemented in different scenarios, and I need to understand like how it will work. And also there is another part is like we need to understand what it means on the cost wise. What is the license cost on those? How the agent, because agent for us, how they are going to charge you on that one. What else you need? Data cloud and so on. So those are the things. But yeah, I think like for this year, I would say that the AI will be the biggest thing for me that I'm looking for.
If I may follow up really quickly on that one, like we know that Salesforce is not the cheapest CRM, and probably because they are the supermarket of all the possible features and capabilities. Do you think the price is going to be a big decision making thing for you and your organization? That if it's kind of really pricing outside your comfort level or budgets?
Well, it's like if you think about it that way, that like you already have a Salesforce licenses, and then depending on what licenses you have, you may have already some data cloud functionality, some AI functionality included, but then it's like how that will be charged, like if you go over whatever the quota you have and so on, and that will be of course question, because like it's really again not knowing what will happen. Like let's say if we implement the agent force for sales, and we have let's say 100 users. We don't know how much they are using. Some of them will be using a lot. Some of them are not using that much, but we still need to figure out like, so we don't end up in a situation that like we are like you could do in like AWS, that you end up like a huge cost because you have a processes running.
Right. What I'm hearing on this is the traditional model where there was a software maintenance fee or a software support cost. Customers negotiating that back to say, I don't want to pay the support fee, and I'm actually going to use AI tools for that. And they're reallocating the budget toward more of the innovative tools like or something, because I can do it better, faster, cheaper using those tools instead of just adding another cost on top of my license cost to the original CRM vendor, which I don't know, Arto, does that sound like something you guys?
Well, it really definitely is probably will. It's like that for some of the companies, but I would think that like the big companies where they have like full-blown IT teams for Salesforce, it's a little bit different situation, because like then you may not really rely on any like the Salesforce support itself that much. So and depending on what licenses you have, you might have like the premier support already as part of the licenses. So that's really one of those things that it will be interesting how it will play around.
That, and what does that admin role transform into? Because you're really not administrators, you're really managers or overseers of agents in a way, right?
Well, that's like the Salesforce admin, like overall, it's sometimes people make the mistake that they think that like when you talk about Salesforce admin that, it's like a database admin. But most of the time, Salesforce admin knows much more than just a database. They can do user support. They can do end user support. They can, depending on what kind of team they are working, but they can do the reports, dashboards. They can even do configuration. I have seen Salesforce instances that single admin has been managing 200 users and building processes and different custom functionality on that Salesforce instance. So it's really, yes, I think there will definitely AI will bring new tools for admin, but I don't think that admin itself will disappear anywhere. We still need those.
Yeah, well said. Like, I completely agree with you. I think it will be interesting to see how this kind of a digital robot labor force, starts to operate. But I think, at least in the foreseeable future, I'm seeing the human, the owner of the business owner, the business process owner in the center, managing and like really planning these outcomes and just using the resources kind of differently. But if I may go real quickly back on the agent force and the pricing that Arto brought up, and I think it's a really, really interesting point, because I think still after the Dreamforce in last fall, I think Salesforce was talking about this $2 per outcome based pricing, which is a kind of a new way to price. Like most of Salesforce, is still seats and user-based pricing, and now like AI transforming into more of an outcome-based pricing. It wasn't really clear what is a one conversation of that AI conversation and how it's priced. Like if there is a delay in between, is it tied to a session, and like all of those details were a little unclear. I'm still not in 100% no. I've met maybe 3 customers that have Agentforce deployments, and I think it's kind of like now becoming then, of course, more prevalent. But I think the interesting question from that is then also that, of course, Salesforce needs to show, more profits and bigger revenues every year. But is this Agentforce now kind of new revenue, or is it coming maybe from somewhere else? So now in one of the automations Valo is looking into, of course, is the actual usage. So we are translating the logs. We're looking at what people are doing. Are they using Agentforce? Is Agentforce being used? Is there some other users, perhaps that, they don't log into the application, or there's some other app connections or other managed packages that we're spending a lot of money that actually we can now kind of optimize differently. So I'm kind of curious to see in now this 2025, is AI going to be kind of on top of the growth, or is it actually the money is kind of coming somewhere else, and perhaps some of the more legacy products or some other areas that are maybe less actively used or maybe less of a priority in a way. And I think we'll be, I'm really looking forward for Q1 and Q2 results and kind of see how then that Agentforce adoption moves, and then talking to customers to better understand that now is that hey, I'm trading off some community use or experience cloud or some other capabilities into this more powerful AI tooling, and or will they kind of continue to spend more into these cloud technologies?
Great perspective, Arto. Would love your thoughts on that.
So, Jari, you just say something that really perked up my ears. So you mentioned Valo be able to monitor, like for example, Agentforce use, which, like if you really think about that one, is that I don't know yet, but I don't know how Salesforce will allow companies to see how many transactions they are running, and what is is it something that you get weekly report or monthly report, or is it something that will be visible easily in the Salesforce? So that will be interesting. And also another thing is that you have a third-party apps installed and they have licenses, and yes, you can monitor those on the go to installed packages and look on how many licenses you have left. But that's always again, somebody has to go there and look on that one. So I think that's if those can be somehow automated or make it easily to access, those will be definitely be something that I think everybody will benefit.
Right. Yeah. These are definitely features and capabilities that we have in our food court and offering for customers, and we'll be really excited to see as more adoption with customers, what really happens with these behaviors and what type of new license assignments will happen. And when we think about the transaction and the activity, luckily, one of my old products, the Salesforce event monitoring and these event logs, there is also audit logs and logs for Agentforce. So we'll be able then to track different kind of prompts and know what they contain, and then hopefully provide hardcore evidence to customers and showcase that what's being used and what really works and what type of results they produce.
Yeah, what I found interesting when I first saw Val coming again from a cybersecurity background, it was always exciting in cyber when we would do some type of assessment, either an inventory assessment or some type of audit, and we'd discover, hey, we have an open network connection in a place that was supposed to be air gapped, right? You find this especially in oil and gas. They think in their offshore rig, it's locked down and somebody's watching movies because there's not allowed to do in the middle of the ocean in that night. So they're watching a movie, they got an open internet connection, and wow, okay, that's a liability. And so when Yari first walked me through Valo, that connection graph, right? So in this graph, you can immediately see all the third-party solutions that are connected to your Salesforce instance. And you start to go down a path of like, okay, why is Tableau there? Where is that Tableau? Who are those users in Tableau? So I found that aspect when you were just talking about, third parties and being able to see, to me, that connection graph was compelling and reminded me a lot of the topographies we would design into security tools. So I think that idea of being able to first have the visibility, right, and then being able to apply any type of either prompt or rule set that you want, so it's automatically done, to me is very compelling.
Agreed.
Hey, Yari, I'll throw you other question on Valo. So can Valo do things like identify what is the API version the connection has and so on?
Yes, absolutely. And especially if there's any degradation in API versions, that can be a major security concern. Yeah. And also things that like how an API or any type of a service is authenticating, how it's configured. There can be a security issue. There can be a risk associated. And most importantly, if it's breaks down, and it can result into, too many requests or no requests at all. So sometimes if the Salesforce is your system of record, this can be business stopping activities. So yeah, absolutely. Like this connectivity and connection layer, app connections, APIs is in the heart of Valo's app.
Yeah, and that's like just like Salesforce is now deprecating API versions until I think it's version 30, like this coming summer. And I think Salesforce is right now, the API version is something 50 something, I think 51 right. Or 52. So in that way, is that like specifically in older orgs that has custom made integrations, you might have a situation that you have like a really old API and finding that one is kind of like it's a challenge. You are spending quite a lot of time to going through the logs and find like, what is that one integration that runs once a month that is using like old API version.
Mm-hmm. It's going to be deprecated. I think the summer 24 version was running version 61. And it's interesting. I remember some of my Salesforce engineers when I was in the platform when I was thinking that like who in their mind would use an API that is more than 15 years old. They said, oh, you'd be surprised. There's like so many legacy connections and others that people are built and just don't think about it. Technical debt or whatever we call it, but overall. So yeah, absolutely. I think just basically, simple things to alert users, easy to fix on the Salesforce side, but on custom applications that require fixing also on the customer side, I think is the problematic. That's an area where Valo unfortunately cannot help yet, but we're also looking into that, like what would be the common platforms, and like some simple things in terms of scripts or things to innovate with customers. So stay tuned for some updates on this kind of automated integration health, where Valo not only can alert, but it can actually rebuild and help customers to create adjacent, more modern ways to authenticate with Salesforce and use the latest APIs.
Yeah, and Ardo, when you just said that, and Yari, you reminded me of something in the medical field that's called small area variance, where a doctor in one part of town may do a procedure a particular way, and a doctor on the other side of town may do it differently. And I find this very similarly with Salesforce consultants. So I'll have different consultants come in. The first one will say, well, this is the only way to do it. And then the next one will come in and do it completely differently and undo what the other one did. And so you're left with kind of this mess of different variances that happen. And I don't know if you've experienced that.
Well, that's like, it's really common. There is normally at least two different ways to do exactly the same thing in Salesforce. And then you also throw in the situation that Salesforce has the best practices, but they have a tendency to change them.
A better practice than the best one.
There used to be one way to do that one, and then they went for another one. And it's like, depending how up to date you are with the best practices, that can end up situation that you are doing something that it's not anymore the best way to do.
And that's something, if I can just automate the standardization or remove the variance, could be helpful. And I don't know if that aligns with the design thinking that you have for your solution set. But
absolutely. Like we have read, all the best practices from Salesforce own blogs, but also the community blogs. So our AI understands also the criticism which doesn't really exist in Salesforce's own product documentation. I think it's important that there's a lot of like other forums and other places of discussion in terms of criticism where some certain approaches may no longer be so applicable. And maybe that comes from comparing Salesforce to another platform or another systems where things are done maybe in a more modern way. But as Arthur described, these are, living platforms in a way that change, and that they've grown over these years in capabilities and continue to change with customer requirements and they get more modern, they get more secure, they get better performance. But while that happens, I would also go back to my earlier point, so does complexity. So usually then they come with a new tooling and new way of doing things that then us as customers or stakeholders in the ecosystem have to learn them. And, and sometimes there's just no time for that and stuff gets, left, undone, and we just don't do it because, we didn't find the time, or it wasn't a priority because it's not helping us to, bring new business.
Yeah. Very interesting point too on the sentiment. In the sense that AI, it just needs data. It's not always going to look at the sentiment of the data, nor is it going to be a marketing person that's going to filter out or in various data. It's just going to take all the data set. It's very fascinating that you're pointing it toward community, which is really where we have the discussions in the real world of how things truly work in the field. And that's where you can actually find the best problems to solve, or like jobs to be done from a product builder perspective. Good. Well, I think we're moving into the tail end, and I'd like to see if we can give some takeaways for the viewers of action items or things that they can do now that we've kind of talked through, okay, what's the Salesforce ecosystem? What's happening in the AI space? Let's think about what would be action points for folks that are watching this webinar. And maybe I'll start with you, Jari, see if you have a couple of points of what should someone do after watching this webinar.
Yeah, I would say that like you can visit our company website, valo.ai, look for more information, and most importantly, click on the button to start a trial. Try AI, Valo's AI service for your sandbox, take it for a test drive, take it for a spin, and see for yourself, like, what type of, maturity you have in Salesforce. Have you been there for 10 years, 5 years, 1 year? You might get like certain kinds of benefits very quickly, and it may be a tool that gives you additional speed. And if it's not, maybe you can drop us a note here in this webinar, or give us an idea or something you would like to see Valo to do for you. That like, what is that level of automation or mundane, repetitive task that you kind of got to do every week continuously all the time, and then you'd like AI to do for you, and we can enter into dialogue with you and see where that issue could live on our roadmap. And then for Arto, I would like to actually ask him also that as probably passing the same question. There's some really exciting community events. We recently saw Arto in Dallas, Texas, and I'd be curious to hear if Arto is going to attend these Salesforce Agentforce conferences, developer events, and others, and if we mutually find value attending these regional events, and what is Arto's thoughts on catching up and with the industry and the latest tech trends in these Salesforce events?
Well, I think the Salesforce events are great in a way that like it's not just learning what Salesforce is telling you. There is normally there is partners who present their products, and also like one big thing is like you meet the other Salesforce community members, and specifically if you have been around in the Salesforce for a longer time, there is a good chance that you know quite a few, and it's like you meet people people in your past that are in the Salesforce, and sometimes it's really people that you don't even expect. But it's like I think one thing is to those events is really, it's not just learning something from Salesforce, basically learn something from community, which is great. And it's like I try to get those when I have a chance. I might sound like a Salesforce ad, but Salesforce is not paying anything for me on this one. So, but for this year, my comment is that if you haven't yet get involved with the Agentforce, you haven't been any Agentforce event, or you haven't seen any Agentforce webinar, try to get involved, try to learn, because Salesforce is clearly going for Agentforce. They are clearly going for AI, and this is just the beginning. We are seeing what just the beginning. There is a spring release coming. There is a summer release coming. We don't even know what will be on the winter release. So it will be really interesting. And I think you just should go and learn what you can on the Agentforce and AI.
Good suggestions. So I'll throw in a last one, and then we'll close it out. As a business owner and someone who's an innovator, I'm always looking at what I'm spending on different assets, different software programs, people. And so it would be interesting to see, okay, how much are we spending on Salesforce every year? Just license and support costs. How many people do I have doing that? And for me, someone who likes to push the envelope, I'd think, okay, where can I find experiment money? Right? Can I take 1% of that budget? Can I take 5% of that and find a way to shave that out so I can try new things? And do I have an advocate in my organization who's got the aptitude and curiosity to move forward, who's got a learning mindset? So is there an Arto in my organization that I know if I free up that and I give him this funding to go try new tools, I can almost guarantee he's going to find an efficiency level, right? He's going to use a Valo and he's going to save 3 days a week. And not only that, he's probably going to teach everyone else in the admin pool how to do this. So that'd be the other thing if people are watching this webinar and just thinking through in 2025, how are you allocating resources? Because AI is only going to increase, and it has to be use case driven. It has to show a business result. So can you reallocate and make room for experimentation in 2025 would be kind of my call to action for this. So good. With that, I want to thank you both for the conversation and for joining today, both Arto and Jari. Thank you for this tech talk. And
thank you.
Please share feedback for us and with our speakers. So thank you both.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.